Hi, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Enterprise Alchemy podcast. I am joined by Ryan McCrea. Hi, Ryan. It's really, really great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Megan.
How are things?
Things are well.
Amazing. Great. I just want to so let's just jump straight in with some of the things we've been talking about in the past. And I know that you have a really, really cool career story. So I really wanted to start there and just things that you've learned early on throughout your career development.
Sure, that's great. Yeah, so I've got an undergraduate degree in psychology. When I was getting my psychology degree, I wanted to figure out what was next for me, and I ended up going the route of industrial organizational psychology, which is like business psychology. So that's where my schooling was. Really went to school, got two psychology degrees, got that master's in IO psychology. Great program. It was a science practitioner program, which means I got a chance to not only like learn about it in class, write papers, do presentations, take tests, but we actually went and did it. So if we had a class on surveying, we went and did it. If we had a class on performance management, we helped an organization with it. So very, very cool program that I got a chance to be part of. After that, I really jumped into the work world. And so I started working in HR, which was probably where I knew I was going to end up working. I didn't necessarily want to work for an assessment company. I liked working in an environment, working with people. People will be something we'll probably talk a lot about today. And so for me, that was something that I knew I wanted to go down that path. So I've actually done everything in HR at this point in my career, about 20 years in, except for payroll. And that's about it. And believe me, nobody wants me working on their payroll at all. So it's a good thing that I haven't done that. But I've spent it on kind of that HR business partner side, so kind of more of that generalist kind of role, doing a lot of things in HR. But now I'm a little bit more on the specialized side. The last like 10 years have been more in the learning and leadership development world or the organizational development world, where I get to use all those business psychology courses in what I do now. I've also had a kind of a unique career, like you mentioned, because I've worked at a lot of different places. So
Mhm.
I've started out in an animal shelter and worked for one of the oldest animal shelters in the country called the Humane Society of Missouri. And then I went from there to work in retail and worked at a company called Brown Shoe that had a whole bunch of stores. They also had a whole bunch of wholesale brands that they sold. Moved on from there to work for a large agricultural company that was global, was in 65 countries. Went from there to work for a bank. Did a short stint in tech for a little while, and now I work for an energy company in St. Louis called Ameren.
Amazing. I find your career progression so interesting. Like it's something I wanted to pick up later on, but I'm just going to dive straight into it now and just we spoke about it, didn't we? I think a lot of people worry that if they've got too many different sectors or job roles on their CV or when they're applying for a job, is that better or is that worse? And I think we discussed, isn't it? Should we be looking to stay within one sector and one company for years on end? Or do you actually think, from your own experiences, having multiple different opportunities is actually bettered your career?
I think it depends on the person and really what they want to do. So I do know a lot of people that have spent their whole career at one company or two companies or in one sector. I find that I like the challenge of actually getting a chance to go to another organization and learn that new organization because the skills I'm bringing to these organizations are the same. Whether I'm
Mhm.
working as an HR business partner or really more in the last couple of years when I've been leading teams doing learning and leadership development, I'm taking that same set of skills to those organizations. So I like the challenge of meeting new people, meeting new organizations, understanding how they work, and then building new teams when I'm going to those organizations. Because some of the ones that I've worked for have been really fascinating, especially
Mhm.
like the agricultural industry, really understanding like how that worked. The company that I'm currently working for, energy is a very interesting industry. So trying to understand what's going on. There's a lot going on in energy too. We hear all this around green energy and what that looks like. And what this is going to be moving forward. So just it's kind of an exciting time in energy as well. So for me personally, that's has been the track for me. But a lot of people may stay at one organization and may find those different opportunities. I think some of the last team I worked with at a big bank, like so a couple of the team people that were in the talent development world, they really came from like the call center. And
Mhm.
so they kind of navigated these careers throughout the organization, did different things. And I see that all the time at every organization I've been with as I'm working with leaders. They may have worked in like four or five different parts of the company, maybe even more as they've stayed there. So sometimes people stay in a company, and find their way through it in many, many different ways. Some people go to different companies and look for different opportunities. And then there's those some people that just want to really like what they do and that's what they want to do. I've worked with a lot of scientists in one of the past companies. They just loved doing science. Didn't really
Mhm.
want to be a leader, didn't really want to be managing people, didn't even really like doing paperwork, quite honestly. They just wanted to do science. And so that's what they did. It's, I guess, what is your passion? What are you interested in? So
Mm,
I don't think there's any wrong way or right way when it comes to this, as long as you're really owning your career and making sure that you have some intentionality in what you're doing.
100%. I think I myself personally, I think I've got to a point where it would be because I've been in and out of different things in different sectors of education, marketing, music. And so for me, it's really important now that I find somewhere that almost I sort of lay my roots and start to build, but I have to be within a company that has clear career progression. I don't think I could go somewhere where I've maxed it out and then just stay there. Do you know what I mean? I need to keep growing and growing and growing. I think if you've kind of got that mindset, whether you're going from one place to another or staying in that one place that can offer you that to you too, I think you kind of onto a real winner. As long as you're like constantly learning and improving and bettering yourself, I think you're doing well.
100%. I mean, you just
Mm,
have to know yourself and know what you want a little bit. So you have
yeah.
to know those experiences are that you really, really want. What do you want to get out of being in a work environment? What skills are you trying to build? What knowledges do you want to build?
Mm,
And if you're getting those in different roles, it might even be roles that you didn't think about.
yeah.
That's the important piece. Like, how are you continuing to develop? How are you continuing to
Mm,
grow? And again, you can do that in one organization, moving around into different roles. You can do it in different organizations. You can do it in professional organizations sometimes. There's just lots of different ways, consulting, lots of different ways to do
mm.
this and to kind of build those skills that you want. But you have to know yourself first. If you don't know where you are, it's really hard to figure out where you're going to go.
I like that. I like that. And I liked as well that when we had discussed in the past, you have to tell us about the woodpecker butterfly theory. I just really like really nice visual examples or something when you're trying to describe something. I think that was a really cool one.
Yeah, sure. So when we think about this, like people that really enjoy staying in an organization versus going to a different one, like
Mm.
I, most of the people that I've run into seem to be a little bit of either a woodpecker
Hmm.
or a butterfly. And so woodpeckers maybe again do enjoy kind of staying at that one organization and just looking at the different experiences. So if you think about a woodpecker pecking away on a tree, they really love that tree. They've made it their home. They go to different parts of the tree to do what they need to do to get their nourishment, and they love that. And that's great. That's okay. I'm a little bit more of a butterfly. So what I've found is that I like to flutter from different flowers to get different experiences. And
Hmm.
that's really important to me. That's what keeps me fed. That's what keeps me excited. That's what keeps me interested. So I'm a little bit more of a butterfly. Some people are a little bit more of a woodpecker. But, in a good working environment and with a good team, you kind of need a little bit of both of that. You want those people that have been there for a while that kind of know it. You also want some people that probably are from the outside that have different experiences, a different point of view. Maybe they don't know the organization as well, but they're just bringing something different to the team than someone who's been there and is kind of used to it after a 10 or 15 or 20-year period. So some of the best teams I've worked on have had a nice mix of both those individuals, some woodpeckers and some butterflies. And you kind of get up, that's just a very strong team when you can get those two
Mm.
together.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, let's go a little bit back. Let's talk more about this, your background in business psychology, because I find that really interesting as well. And what kind of businesses do you think could actually benefit from what you'd learn and that kind of outlook and that skills in the company or organization?
Sure. So I'll kind of start with, this is my tagline. If somebody was to ask me kind of what my elevator speech was, I would tell you that I like to take the psychological concepts and help organizations, teams, leaders be better. And that's really what I think business psychology is. It's taking those psychological concepts and bringing them into the business world in kind of a real way. So you ask me, like, who can benefit from that? Any company that's got people. Like, if people are messy, people aren't easy. How many people have you heard someone say, "Man, this job would be great except for all the people"? Uh, that's just the reality. Whether you're in any
Mm,
industry, any company, yes, you have assets as a business, but your people are also an asset. So are you using the people and are you getting a chance to take advantage of the skills that people are bringing to the table to the level that you could or should? And that's where not every organization does that. So can any organization take benefit from business psychology? Yeah, if you've got people, as long as you're literally not just running you know, a factory full of robots, like you can get some benefit from business psychology because you got to think about teamwork. Like
mm,
without good teamwork, your productivity is not going to be where you want it to be, or the organization is not going to be working as well as you want it to be. And probably a lot of mistakes will probably be made too. So all of those things, when you're thinking about team dynamics, when you're thinking about culture, when you're thinking about performance management or holding people accountable for things, a lot of that is the areas that we spend our time and our energy in business psychology or talent development, organizational development, whatever kind of words you use for it. And if you've got people, I think business psychology can help make that organization better because this is what we're thinking about on a day-to-day basis. A
Mm.
lot of people are very focused on the bottom line, and that's great. But somebody has to be focused on the people and the connection and people wanting to develop and grow. Because, like you said, you're not too different, Megan. A lot of people that are working in businesses and organization, if they feel like they can't grow, they can't develop, they'll leave
Yeah.
because they want to go find something else. And if they
Mm.
feel like stuck in their organization, they're not going to want to stay there. So not people don't like finish school, and when you become a manager, or you didn't take a school in a class in school usually where they told you how to be a good manager and how to have a great development conversation and how to really think about developing and growing an organization or building a team. You rarely had that unless you were in a field like mine. So that's
Hmm.
something that we do. We try to help organizations and especially leaders figure this out a little bit more.
Mm. Did it did it teach anything about yourself that you kind of highlighted? Actually, that was a real link when you were learning about, like, when you think about human psychology and then you almost bring it into your real life. You're like, actually, those are traits I have, or those are things, that's the way I think. Or do you know what I mean? Did this open up any more doors for you in your business realm and your own learning and just looking at things differently moving forward?
Yes, and this degree is very unique. So this IO psychology degree, a lot of it is again about psychology. And if you
Mm.
know anything about psychology, a lot of times we learn more about ourselves through assessments.
Yeah.
And so that was something that we learn about in the degree that I had. You learn a little bit more about assessments, how to read them, how to understand them, how to interpret them, really even how to build them if you have to build an assessment from scratch. So because of that, what's the best way to learn about some of those assessments is to take them and
Mm.
learn about yourself. So I mean, I spent the majority of my graduate degree like taking assessments, learning more about them. So yeah, I learned a lot about myself during that time because we're all like onions and you're peeling back a layer and another layer
Hmm.
and another layer. Like rarely are people just uncomplicated. Like there's something going on because again, people are people and they're complicated things. Assessments help us kind of peel back those layers and understand who we are in different pieces of us. So yeah, like I'm a pretty extroverted person.
Mm.
Like that's something I learned pretty quickly. And that every time that I've taken like the MBTI or a test that talks about extroversion, I'm off the scale crazy extroverted every time that I've seen it. So I mean, that's something that I learned about myself. And as I think about the work environment that I'm in, that's important for me. Like I've learned over the years, a fully remote environment doesn't really work for me. Like I can't just be sitting at home by myself. It just doesn't work. Like I need to be with people. I prefer to be in an office. I know not everybody does. I prefer to be in an office at least a couple times a day. I don't want to be there every single day, but a couple times a day because I need that energy because I'm an extrovert, I gain my energy from others. Like that's how I recharge my batteries. Where some
Mm.
individuals, like my wife's a little bit more of an introvert, she gains her energy from either me or one or two people, or she needs kind of alone time to kind of recharge her batteries. Like a party and a big, dinner, having a whole bunch of people over is not where my wife gains energy. Me, yes, her, no. So I think
Mm.
all of us have to know a little bit more about that, knowing ourselves. How do we work? What are our skills? What do we bring to the table? How do we like to communicate and partner and connect with people? And I learned a lot of that as I was taking some of those assessments. And I think I encourage everyone to take as many of those as you can. If you get offered to take one, like take it. It's just going to
Mm.
give you another layer that you can peel back and learn a little bit more about yourself.
Mm. Do you think, because this is something else as well we spoke a little bit about and I said to you about, is that your positive energy? When we had our first call, I got off the call and I just felt elated. I just felt really good. I felt like I took a lot from you and it was just so easy to talk to you, like we'd known each other, even though we're across the world. Um, and that's your spark, that's you. But have you always been that way? Like, how did you kind of find that? That's something I find really interesting of people. Like we said, some people will be watching us and thinking, how do I get to that point? Like, oh my gosh, everything looks so rosy for you. But were there challenges you had to overcome during your career or your personal development that you were like, actually, that's probably one of the reasons why I am where I am today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think from an a kind of a communication extroversion, the kind of the passion that I bring is I
Mm.
love what I'm doing. Like, so I found my passion. And
Yeah.
I'm always drawn to people that know what their passion is. I don't care what that passion is. It might be Magic the Gathering cards or football, or whatever that is. Like, I love people that are passionate about something. So this is the thing that I'm passionate about. I think the extroversion is a big part of that because I enjoy people. I enjoy connecting with people. I think it's like the psychology piece is part of this
Mm.
too. I enjoy knowing people, learning more about them, understanding, helping, giving them ahs so they can kind of continue to grow and have that light bulb turn on. Like, that's why I get up in the morning. So I've probably always been that way in some way, shape, or form. I've been a pretty energetic kid. Like, I always enjoyed connecting with other people, talking with other people. When informal leadership opportunities happened when I was a kid, I would jump on those things because I really enjoyed it. So part of that, I was an RA during college. I ran our on-campus like psychology professional organization. So I've always kind of loved leadership. I've loved people. I loved connecting. So that was something that I think for me was always there. Now, one thing that was a little bit more of a journey for me was actually presenting. So when I was in grad school and I was getting that master's degree, I remember I was the first year in the program and there were second years. And I'd be looking at those second years presenting in some of our classes and other ways and some of these different organizations we went to work with. And I was like, huh, they're really good at this. And I feel like I could be better. And I remember sitting down with our chair of our department, who was also my thesis chair, and said, hey, like, I think I want to be a lot better at this. Like, I think I'm okay, but I want to be good. And
Mm.
she's like, great. She goes, well, let's do this. We have to do presentations a lot in classes at these different organizations. How about I sit down and give you some advice and guidance as you're going through this? So I'm going to see you doing a lot of those presentations. I can sit down, I can give you feedback. So we started that. She would give me feedback. She would give me tips. I would go and watch people that I really admired that were great orators and really understand, like, how did they do it? What was their cadence? How were they doing these things? And so that was super, super helpful for me. That was a way to really learn a little bit more about how did people do this and do this well? So that was the start. I think by the time I graduated, we did this little graduate presentation of our theses. And I actually had an opportunity where I won that. Like, I won the whole thing. I think I won a little money, which was great in grad school because you're poor and winning a little bit of money isn't bad. But it really showed kind of my growth in the skill set. And then when I started my first job, I know the president, we were doing these quarterly like town hall meetings. She's like, I'm tired of doing this. Can you be the MC? And so I was like, okay. So I was the MC for these quarterly town halls with 150 to 200 people in them. So it got a chance to get me in front of people again more, and I was training more. So as I continued to go through all of that, that was a big part of it. And then I think one of the big turning points for me to go from a good presenter to probably more of a great presenter was really taking this course I was at. I was at kind of that big agricultural company, and they had put me in a leadership development program. And there was the Center for Creative Arts in our area here in St. Louis has a business arm. It's called CocoBiz. And they did this 3-day class with us called Artful Speaker. And they brought artists in to help teach us a little bit more about really telling a story and being a good presenter. So we're talking like actors and improv artists and visual artists and also I'm trying to think, poets, writers, like all of that, because they were like, how are you thinking about your story? How are you preparing? And they even went through a lot of activities like that actors and improv artists use to make sure that they can just be prepared. Like, have your mouth ready. Our mouths are a muscle. You have to prepare to get ready to go and present. Like, that's a
Mm.
huge, huge part of it. Um, it's a muscle. It's almost like being an athlete. You have to get prepared. You can't just jump right into the ring and you're ready to go. So that was something that they really taught us. And I will tell you that took me from what I think was like an 8 to a 10.
Mm.
But that was the thing that kind of really pushed me over because they
Mhm.
talked a lot about scripting. They talked a lot about being prepared. And scripting is like when you look at the talking points you're going to have and you really think about where you're going to use a pause. What word are you really going to inflect on more? What gesture are you going to use? Just like you think about people acting and like stand-up comedians, like they've got that all figured out. They've worked through it. And if you can do that in the same way when you're presenting, like you can be a really, really wonderful presenter. So that was something where I had to kind of continue to grow, and I feel like I'm in a really good spot now.
Mm. That's quite a journey, isn't it? But if you were to go right back to the beginning again, and you notice there was something you wanted to improve on, and someone else is looking at this now, and I think actually public speaking is one of those things that people really struggle with.
It is.
You kind of got it or you haven't to begin with. Not everyone can learn it, but it's that it's that inner anxiety, isn't it? It's that inner self-sabotage of I'm going to mess up, I'm going to do it in front of loads of people, it's going to be embarrassing. So if that's someone now looking at this saying, right, you went from there to there, amazing, but what would you say to someone that was like, I want to start this, but I'm too scared?
I think I would want to know more what what wasn't working well or what was getting in their way. So for some people, they talk too fast. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, they don't talk loud enough. For some people, they use the same monotone voice when they're talking the whole time. So, I mean, I would want to know a little bit more about that. Some people are struggle a lot with when they are really put on the spot. And so if they have questions coming their way, they just don't really know how to handle it. They're not really good on their feet, as people like to
Mm,
say. And so I think it depends on the scenario and question and situation that they have. If somebody is not good on their feet, I will tell you one of the things I've encouraged them to do. So those people that, like, for the most part, might be a good presenter, maybe have a good feel when they're in the room, maybe read the room very well, but just once they get hit with those questions, they freeze. They don't know what to
mm,
do. I encourage them to get really uncomfortable, because uncomfortable is when we grow. And so I often will have them go and encourage them to sign up for 6 or 8 weeks of improv classes, because improv is all about reacting. It's all
mm-hmm,
about reacting to, someone else bringing something to you. It's about that yes and. And
mm,
so if someone can do that, if they can get a little bit more comfortable with the unknown, which is, I think, what
mm,
causes people to get fearful and scared and get really sweaty and
mm,
have their mouth kind of lock up on them, is if you can get used to some things like that, then that's okay. But again, we have to get uncomfortable. We have to get uncomfortable. Sometimes there's something else there. So is there like a mental block? And
mm,
if there's a mental block on why someone can't present or can't be a good presenter or gets really uncomfortable, maybe something happened to them when they were a kid, maybe they had to do something in a class, maybe something really embarrassed happened. Like, how do you help them get through that mental block too, to get to a point where they can just kind of start at table stakes? So that
mm,
sometimes is part of it as well. So speaking, there can be a lot of problems and challenges there. And there are people that can be good, that could be great, but they just have to put the work in too. So you have to know why. You have to know what is
mm,
the real problem for someone, and then what might be a way that can really help them work through it.
mm. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Personal experiences like being a singer. I remember starting very young and going out there and would start to warm up the crowd and be like, hey, how's everyone doing today? And then you get silence because everyone's in the pub. They're not paying attention. They don't quite know who you are. And no one really wants to shout out. They're not in that moment where we're one drink in. And I think that caused so much like embarrassment trauma in my head for so long that I ended up just not even talking, would just sing, just keep sing. And starting this job now, and I was asked to start doing podcasts, and I thought, gosh, this is speaking again, this is talking to people, what if I mess up, what if I get in that brain? But I was so almost put on the spot to be uncomfortable that I just did it. Like I just put myself out there, got out of my own way, and was like, right, I don't have a choice, because if I say no, I'm going to pause my career progression until I say yes. And you just had to do it. And then the more I've done it, the more it's like second nature. And I love talking to people. So it's so funny that that one experience really tarnished the remaining years for me as a performer. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this is really such can sing in front of anyone. Talk, no. Don't ask me to talk.
Well,
Which
I,
is
I would
funny.
definitely not sing in front of anyone. Nobody wants to hear that. So you just have to, sometimes it's you translate skills from one area that you're really great in
Mm,
and understand how do you use them in another area too.
mm, yeah.
Because if you're a great singer and you're comfortable there, speaking
Mm,
isn't actually that drastically different.
no.
Like you said, hard environment though. You got to remember who your audience is and playing to your
Yeah.
audience. And if your audience is a pub and only people are only one drink in, then yeah, they haven't loosened up yet, or they're there to hang out and be friends and talk to somebody and
Yeah.
hang out with somebody that they're there on a date. Like, maybe that person isn't the main story. That's not why they're there at that point. So
Mm,
you do have to know your audience as well. I think that's a big part when it comes to presenting too. Like, know who
mm,
you're going to be going into.
mm. Okay, so talking a little bit about background and stuff, you said something really interesting when we'd spoken before. And so my background, I have a somewhat career in education. And I remember you saying to me that one of the worst questions we can ask children is what they want to be when they grow up. And that really stuck with me, because I think probably everyone asks children that, don't they? Like when they're having a awkward conversation with a child or they're on their own, they're like, what do I say? Or what do you want to be when you grow up? And so when you said that to me, I was like, that's interesting, because I've definitely said that. So dive in deeper to that. I want to know a bit more as to why you've got to that conclusion.
Sure, I know, I know. It sounds probably kind of controversial, and it's like, really,
Mm,
what is your problem, guy? But There's a real reason behind that. You know, when we are kids, we get asked, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And we jump into mostly, hey, you know, I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or a baseball player or a princess or a mermaid, you know, whatever it is. We often think of jobs. I mean, do you remember, Megan, what you wanted to be when people asked you that question when you were a kid?
I probably would have said a singer. Yeah.
A singer? Excellent. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you kind of got a chance to do some of those things you really want to
Mm,
do, and some people do. But you kind of picked a profession. Like you said, here's
yeah.
this job that I'm going to do. I'm going to
Hmm.
be a singer. You know, and that I get it. I get that's why people say that. That's often what they do. But the problem is we're kind of like indoctrinating kids, especially when they're young, into this whole idea that it's really about understanding what job you want. And then you go into, you know, you go into high school. What job do you want? You go to college or uni. What job do you want? Like, you know, we kind of this follows you through your whole life of like, what job are you going to get? What job are you going to get? What job are you going
Mm,
to get? And the problem is that that doesn't really match up well when it comes from a career development perspective. Yes, you might know what job you want, but if you don't really know the experiences you're going to get out of that job or what experiences you want, it kind of gets back to that knowing yourself piece we talked about. It's a problem. Like you have to know the experiences. So I encourage people to stop asking kids that question. Stop indoctrinating people into thinking about roles because I've seen this with hundreds and thousands of people over the years as I've been doing this and helping develop and grow people is that they get really stuck in like, I want my boss's job. And I go, why do you want your boss's job? Well, that's my next step. That doesn't have to be. A lot of people
mm,
think about their career ladder going up. Career ladders can be like a jungle gym. You can go all over the place or a climbing wall. You can go all over the place. Sometimes you might have to go to the left to go up a little bit. Sometimes might have to go right to go up a little bit. Sometimes you might decide this is as high as I want to go on this wall. So, I mean, that is the challenge is that we often kind of get people into this mindset of like roles, 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 roles. I want to know my role. I want to know my career path. That's pretty limiting, you know, because most people have anywhere from 5 to 7 different careers or career paths during their life. And so limiting and getting people to think about just a role isn't the greatest thing. And sometimes roles look great on the outside, but until you go and talk to somebody, it's not what you think it is. When I worked in the retail industry, people loved the idea. See, I love fashion. Like the best job there was to be a buyer because you were picking what was going to go in the stores. So you're going to
mm,
picking the clothes, the shoes, the accessories, all those things that were going to be, you were pretty much impacting fashion. You were impacting what people were wearing. And for the retail world where people love fashion, they love that. That's like the best job you could possibly have. And I would have people come to me all the time and say, I want to be a buyer, Ryan. And I'd say, okay, go talk to Emily. She's my favorite buyer over there. Get a chance to spend some time with her. And 9 times out of 10, when they came back to me, they did not want to be a buyer anymore. And the reason they didn't want to be a buyer anymore because they didn't know that, yeah, you do get to go on trips and go to Europe and check other places and check out fashion, but you also have to make sure that it sells. Like you're the
mm.
one that's responsible for that. So you have to be really good at math and forecasting and all of these other things around data that people were like, what? Huh? Like, I just really love fashion. Like, I'm not good with data. You have to. Like, you can't put all the things in the stores and then they don't sell. You're not going to be a buyer very long if that's the case. So we get really wrapped up in roles and what we think those roles are, but it's about experiences. If I can tell anything, one thing, if they take away one thing from this podcast today, I hope it's more than one, but one thing is really think about the experiences you want and all the different types of roles and jobs you can get in those experiences. Don't get so wrapped up into a specific role. If you are really wrapped up in a specific role, ask yourself why. What experiences do you think you're going to get out of it? And then go talk to somebody that does it and make sure that that's actually the experiences that you're going to get out of it. I don't know how many times I see people jump into a role and then be disappointed because it's not what they thought it was going to be.
Mm.
But did you
This is
talk to
one,
anyone
yeah.
before you did it? Probably
Mm.
not.
This is one of the reasons that we found so much positive energy from these podcasts because what we want to be able to do is talk to people who are actually in those roles, how they got there and what they learned from being there. And I know your background is HR, it's massive HR. I said to you, we spoke a bit, like, how do you make HR interesting? If someone's interested in a career in HR, how is it interesting? How has it changed?
Yeah, you know, I think HR is a big area. So when people think of HR, they think of hiring and firing someone. Like that's it. Like I think that's about all they think of in HR. Maybe your benefits. You think about what are you getting paid and what
Mm,
benefits do you have. But HR is a much bigger area than that. Yes, there's your benefit, there's your comp, there's your payroll, there is your what's called an HR business partner a lot of times, which is that person that's partnering with the business. So if you like people and you like problems and you like working with people to help find solutions, that's sometimes a really great role too. But a lot of what people think about is that hiring, firing, that's about it.
Mm.
There's so much more to it. Like when it comes to the what I do on my side of the house. So, there's learning and leadership development, there's change management, there's employee experience, I think is a big area that's become more and more HR analytics. There's a lot of technology jobs in the HR side of the house. So it depends on what you love and what you want to do. But I think with HR, it's that it can be fun. So this is my personal take on it. HR can be fun. So I think, especially for what I do in the learning and leadership development area, it doesn't always have to be cookie cutter and boring. And so I love doing things a little different and doing some things out of the box. So a couple examples at one of the organizations I was at is we were starting a new career development kind of program that we're calling Commerce for You. It was at a bank that I was at. And we started off with a horror movie trailer just to kind of give people like a little snippet of, hey, this thing is coming for you. There was
Mm.
also, we got rid of the year-end performance review at that organization. So we did a really fun video that tried to help people explain why is this easier to talk monthly instead of doing it just once a year when you're talking about someone's performance conversations. We also told them during that same thing that it was important for them to really get a chance to have those conversations however they wanted. So we did a Dr. Seuss video spoof where we talked about, you know, you could have this conversation on a plane, you could have it on a train, you could have it drinking tea, you could have it by this tree. Like we had these fun kind of engaging videos because people want to be engaged. Think about what we are
Mm.
now. We're like a TikTok world. Like we want quick things like that. And I think what we do in learning and leadership development, you can do the same thing. You can use that same style, that TikTok, you can spoof things, you can make things fun, you can make things energetic, you can make people want to interact with them because everything that we do in HR, I think about it as being a product. And
Mm.
when you think about a product, you've got to make sure that you're selling your product. You can have a great product, but if you can't market it well, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If you're not actually hitting on the demand that the organization has, it doesn't matter. And so I think that we can have fun. We can make sure that we're connecting people to things. We can think about things in a different and interesting way when we're marketing them. That's part of it. Like we can't have fun. HR does not have to be so uptight. And not all HR people that I know are uptight, but there's some that out there that are. But it doesn't have to not be fun. It doesn't mean that we can't show energy, that we can't show passion, that we can't connect with people in the way that we want to. And I think that's what draws people in, no matter what type of field that you're in. HR being that same thing. So I always love fun. If you ask me what my top 6 values are, one of those is fun. So whatever team I'm on, we want to have fun. We want to do things a little bit differently. We want to see if we can learn how to meet the organization where they're at, but maybe kind of encourage them to do things new and different and a little bit more fun than they would normally do as well. So it can be done. You just have to have the creativity, the support from the organization. They have to make sure that they're comfortable with that. Not all organizations are comfortable with that. And then once you have that creativity, once you have that support, the sky's the limit.
Amazing. There's never enough time, but I want to kind of wrap this up, and I want to leave people with one lasting thought. And if there's someone watching this right now that's maybe in the middle of their career, or they've been asked several times, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? And they just don't know, what advice would you give to that one person?
Sure. So they have to know themselves. It gets back to that earlier advice of like to really know where you want to go, you have to know where you are right now. So
Hmm.
I encourage people to kind of know at least 6 questions about themselves. I feel if you could answer these 6 questions about yourself, you can have a really good career conversation with anyone. They will also give you really good guidance around what do you like, what do you want to do, and then it helps you think about, again, those experiences and the different paths you can take. So I encourage to know this, everyone to know this about themselves, especially, and you'll want to know these questions again and again throughout your career. It's not like we stop changing and we want to stop doing things. So revisit these questions as often as you need to. But I think one of them is what are your values? So you heard me talk about fun being one of my values. That's one of my values. What are your values? Because if you work for an organization that has drastically, or a team that has drastically different values for you than you, it's probably not going to feel right. So what are your values? What are your motivations? What really gets you excited? What gets you excited in the morning? What makes you want to pop out of bed and get ready for the day? What scares you and makes you want to hide under the covers? Like What are those things that motivate you or demotivate you? I think that's an important one too. What are you good at? What do you like doing and what do you not like doing? Because sometimes we're good at things, but we don't like doing them. So it's different.
Mm,
So what do you like doing? What do you not like doing? And that's important because you want to make sure that you're in a job where you're doing mostly what you like doing. Very rarely does someone have a job that's 100% perfect where there's nothing that they dislike doing. I mean, we all have something that we dislike doing probably in our jobs. So we've got to be realistic about it. But it better hopefully be 60, 70, 80% of your job being things that you like. Hopefully. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? So what are you really good at? And what are you not so good at? And not only what are you good at from a strength perspective, but what do you potentially misuse and overuse? So every strength can be misused or overused. Like if you know somebody who's a good communicator, but they over communicate and send like 15-page emails, no one's reading a 15-page email. That's over communicating. So they're leaning into their strength too much. They're overusing it. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? We hit on this one already, so I won't spend too much time here, but what are the experiences that you want? This is a key one. If you know what those are, you can find the right roles that will plug you into those. Also, as a leader, you can ask these 6 questions. But if you know what experiences your people want, it's easier to help develop and grow them. So that experiences question is key. What does career success look like for you? So what is important to you when it comes to career success? That's different for everybody. For some people, that is, oh, I just want to do my 40 hours and I've got something that maybe I'm a singer on the side. I love doing that. That's where I want to spend my time and energy. For other people, it might be, I want to be the CEO or I want to own my own company. Awesome. Everybody's got what career success is different for them. So really understanding what career success means for you, and that's going to change throughout your lifetime, is important too. So if you can answer those 6 questions about yourself, it helps you understand a little bit more about the direction that you want to go. So you can start talking to leaders. You can start talking to people during interviews. You can start talking to mentors and coaches and friends and family members and that person that you meet at the coffee shop that happens to work in an area that you're really interested in. It gives you an opportunity to share your story a little bit better. So that's often when people are just don't know what's next for them, I tell them to start there.
fantastic. Ryan, you've been totally amazing. And I'm so fortunate you've been able to come onto the podcast today. I think there's so much people can take away and just feel that vibe from your energy. I've loved it and I've loved chatting to you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me on, Megan.
Amazing. We'll stay in touch. Great connection. And that's this week's episode of the Enterprise Alchemy podcast. I'm Meg and this is Ryan. And we'll see you on the next one.